fine, we move further. We are making an effort to understand sequence of tenses, because tenses is one of the assessment criterion in class 11th in section C. So in order to understand sequence of tenses, I took you through a few important landmarks. I took you through the concept of a finite verb and made you understand the concept of simple, compound and complex sentences. And the last thing that we learned was that the number of clauses is directly proportional to the number of finite verbs. So in a simple sentence there is only one clause. Simple sentence, there is only one clause. There is only one clause, because there will be only one finite verb. One finite verb. In a compound sentence, there will be more than one clause. That means those many number of finite verbs. Same is the case with complex sentence. Same is the case with complex sentence. It will also have more than one clause and those many number of finite verbs. Same is the case with complex sentence. However, the only difference is that in a compound sentence, one clause will be dependent for one clause, or the different clauses will not be dependent for their meaning on one another. All clauses will be independent of each other. Whereas in a complex sentence, the meaning of one clause will be dependent on, or meaning of more than one clauses will be dependent on one main clause. That simply means that a complex sentence will have a main clause and a subordinate clause. Will have a main clause and a subordinate clause only in case of complex sentences, and the rules of sequence of tenses only apply in the case of complex sentences, and this is what you are tested in. Sequence of complex sentences, sequence of tenses, and sequence of tenses, the rules of sequence of tenses apply only in the case of complex sentences. That simply means, in order to put it simply, a complex sentence will have one main verb, and that main verb will be in the main clause, and the tense of that main verb will determine the tense of the finite verb in other clauses. Simply put it like this. I repeat, a complex sentence will have a main finite verb and the tense of which will determine the tense of the finite verb in other clause, or tenses of the finite verbs in other clauses. For example, we write, for example, we say the doctor says that. Now in this case, that is optional. That is optional in this case. The patient will / would get well soon. Let's write another sentence. The doctor said that the patient will / would get well soon. And one last sentence of the same kind. The doctor will say that the patient will get soon. Fine. These are 3 sentences. Let's number them. 1, 2, 3. The first sentence, and these are all complex sentences. The doctor says the patient would get well soon. The doctor said the patient would get well soon, and the doctor will say that the patient would get well soon. All these 3 are complex sentences. The reason is starting here in all the cases. In all the cases. And in this case also. These are all subordinate clauses. Subordinate clauses. The main clauses, the subordinate clauses in all these 3 sentences have been underlined. The main clause remains the doctor says, the doctor said, and the doctor will say. These are the main clauses. Main clauses are that part of a sentence, a complex sentence, or that clause of a complex sentence which contains the main verb or the main finite verb. And the rule of sequence of tenses tell us that the tense of the finite verb in the main clause will determine the tense of the finite verbs in other clauses, in subordinate clauses. So the very first rule is that if the main verb is in present tense, as in the first case, the subordinate clause, the finite verb in the subordinate clause can be in the present or past. So in the first case, will and would both are correct. But if the main verb is in the past tense, in the subordinate clause, the finite verb will also be in the past tense. There are exceptions to this. And in the third, if the main verb is in future tense, if the main verb is in the future tense, then once again, the tense of the finite verb in the subordinate clauses can be in the future or in the past tense. The fact remains that the simple rule is, on which all of the rules of this chapter, sequence of tenses, are based, is if the main verb is in the past tense, the verbs in the subordinate clause will be in the past tense only. However, if the main verb is in the present or future, depending on the context, the tenses of the finite verbs in the subordinate clauses can be future or can be in the past or in the present. Can be in any tense. Can be in any tense. I will repeat this.